Paper 88. Fetishes, Charms, and Magic. The concept of a spirit's entering into an inanimate object, an animal or a human being, is a very ancient and honorable belief, having prevailed since the beginning of the evolution of religion. This doctrine of spirit possession is nothing more nor less than fetishism. The savage does not necessarily worship the fetish, he very logically worships and reverences the spirit resident therein. At first, the spirit of a fetish was believed to be the ghost of a dead man. Later on, the higher spirits were supposed to reside in fetishes, and so the fetish cult eventually incorporated all of the primitive ideas of ghosts, souls, spirits, and demon possession. 1. Belief in fetishes. Primitive man always wanted to make anything extraordinary into a fetish. Chance, therefore, gave origin to many. A man is sick, something happens, and he gets well. The same thing is true of the reputation of many medicines and the chance methods of treating disease. Objects connected with dreams were likely to be converted into fetishes. Volcanoes, but not mountains, became fetishes. Comets, but not stars. Early man regarded shooting stars and meteors as indicating the arrival on Earth of special visiting spirits. The first fetishes were peculiarly marked pebbles, and sacred stones have ever since been sought by man. A string of beads was once a collection of sacred stones, a battery of charms. Many tribes had fetish stones, but few have survived, as have the Kaaba and the stone of scone. Fire and water were also among the early fetishes, and fire worship, together with belief in holy water, still survives. Tree fetishes were a later development, but among some tribes the persistence of nature worship led to belief in charms indwelt by some sort of nature spirit. When plants and fruits became fetishes, they were taboo as food. The apple was among the first to fall into this category. It was never eaten by the Levantine peoples. If an animal ate human flesh, it became a fetish. In this way the dog came to be the sacred animal of the Parsees. If the fetish is an animal and the ghost is permanently resident therein, then fetishism may impinge on reincarnation. In many ways, the savages envied the animals. They did not feel superior to them, and were often named after their favorite beasts. When animals became fetishes, there ensued the taboos on eating the flesh of the fetish animal. Apes and monkeys, because of resemblance to man, early became fetish animals. Later, snakes, birds, and swine were also similarly regarded. At one time the cow was a fetish, the milk being taboo, while the excreta were highly esteemed. The serpent was revered in Palestine, especially by the Phoenicians, who, along with the Jews, considered it to be the mouthpiece of evil spirits. Even many moderns believe in the charm powers of reptiles. From Arabia on through India to the snake dance of the Moki tribe of red men, the serpent has been revered. Certain days of the week were fetishes. For ages Friday has been regarded as an unlucky day, and the number 13 as an evil numeral. The lucky numbers 3 and 7 came from later revelations. 4 was the lucky number of primitive man, and was derived from the early recognition of the 4 points of the compass. It was held unlucky to count cattle or other possessions. The ancients always opposed the taking of a census, numbering the people. Primitive man did not make an undue fetish out of sex. The reproductive function received only a limited amount of attention. The savage was natural-minded, not obscene or prurient. Saliva was a potent fetish. Devils could be driven out by spitting on a person. For an elder or superior to spit on one was the highest compliment. Parts of the human body were looked upon as potential fetishes, particularly the hair and the nails. The long-growing fingernails of the chiefs were highly prized, and the trimmings thereof were a powerful fetish. Belief in skull fetishes accounts for much of later-day head-hunting. The umbilical cord was a highly prized fetish. Even today it is so regarded in Africa. Mankind's first toy was a preserved umbilical cord. Set with pearls, as was often done, it was man's first necklace. Hunchbacked and crippled children were regarded as fetishes. Lunatics were believed to be moonstruck. Primitive man could not distinguish between genius and insanity. Idiots were either beaten to death or revered as fetish personalities. Hysteria increasingly confirmed the popular belief in witchcraft. Epileptics often were priests and medicine men. Drunkenness was looked upon as a form of spirit possession. When a savage went on a spree, he put a leaf in his hair for the purpose of disavowing responsibility for his acts. Poisons and intoxicants became fetishes. They were deemed to be possessed. Many people looked upon geniuses as fetish personalities possessed by a wise spirit, and these talented humans soon learned to resort to fraud and trickery for the advancement of their selfish interests. A fetish man was thought to be more than human. He was divine, even infallible. Thus did chiefs, kings, priests, prophets, and church rulers eventually wield great power and exercise unbounded authority. 2. Evolution of the fetish. It was a supposed preference of ghosts to indwell some object which had belonged to them when alive in the flesh. This belief explains the efficacy of many modern relics. The ancients always revered the bones of their leaders, and the skeletal remains of saints and heroes are still regarded with superstitious awe by many. Even today, pilgrimages are made to the tombs of great men. Belief in relics is an outgrowth of the ancient fetish cult. The relics of modern religions represent an attempt to rationalize the fetish of the savage and thus elevate it to a place of dignity and respectability in the modern religious systems. It is heathenish to believe in fetishes and magic, but supposedly all right to accept relics and miracles. The hearth, fireplace, became more or less of a fetish, a sacred spot. The shrines and temples were at first fetish places because the dead were buried there. The fetish hut of the Hebrews was elevated by Moses to that place where it harbored a super-fetish, the then existent concept of the law of God. But the Israelites never gave up the peculiar Canaanite belief in the stone altar. And this stone which I have set up as a pillar shall be God's house. They truly believed that the spirit of their God dwelt in such stone altars, which were in reality fetishes. The earliest images were made to preserve the appearance and memory of the illustrious dead. They were really monuments. Idols were a refinement of fetishism. The primitives believed that a ceremony of consecration caused the spirit to enter the image. Likewise, when certain objects were blessed, they became charms. Moses, in the addition of the second commandment to the ancient Dalmatian moral code, made an effort to control fetish worship among the Hebrews. He carefully directed that they should make no sort of image that might become consecrated as a fetish. He made it plain, "You shall not make a graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters of the earth." While this commandment did much to retard art among the Jews, it did lessen fetish worship. But Moses was too wise to attempt suddenly to displace the olden fetishes, and he therefore consented to the putting of certain relics alongside the law in the combined war altar and religious shrine, which was the ark. Words eventually became fetishes, more especially those which were regarded as God's words. In this way, the sacred books of many religions have become fetishistic prisons, incarcerating the spiritual imagination of man. Moses' very effort against fetishes became a supreme fetish. His commandment was later used to stultify art and to retard the enjoyment and adoration of the beautiful. In olden times, the fetish word of authority was a fear-inspiring doctrine, the most terrible of all tyrants which enslave men. A doctrinal fetish will lead mortal man to betray himself into the clutches of bigotry, fanaticism, superstition, intolerance, and the most atrocious of barbarous cruelties. Modern respect for wisdom and truth is but the recent escape from the fetish-making tendency up to the higher levels of thinking and reasoning. Concerning the accumulated fetish writings which various religionists hold as sacred books, it is not only believed that what is in the book is true, but also that every truth is contained in the book. If one of these sacred books happens to speak of the earth as being flat,